Welcome to Your Week with St. Luke's, a weekly podcast from St. Luke's United Methodist Church in Orlando that invites you to go deeper with Scripture, to learn God's story, so that together we can live, love, and lead a life following Jesus to awaken disciples and reveal the kingdom.
Grace and peace, and welcome to another episode of Your Week with St. Luke's, our weekly podcast where we are inviting each and every one of you who are listening or watching to learn, live, love, and lead. Learn the text and live it out in your life. Practice it in love and worship and lead your life more fully with these texts deep in your heart. And we're in our sermon series, Beyond the Box. We are the purposeful. We want to be purposeful people, especially in this season and time. And we've been studying the book of Proverbs here. And now we're in week 3, where we're thinking about focus forward. And we're using Proverbs chapter 4, and then some of Proverbs 26. So I'm going to read Proverbs chapter 4, verse 23 through 27, and then I'll jump over to 26. Keep vigilant watch over your heart. That's where life starts. Don't talk out of both sides of your mouth. Avoid careless banter, white lies, and gossip. Keep your eyes straight ahead. Ignore all sideshow attractions. Watch your step, and the road will stretch out smooth before you. Look neither right nor left. Leave evil in the dust. And then chapter 26, verse 16 through 23 says, dreamers fantasize their self-importance. They think they are smarter than a whole college faculty. You grab a mad dog by the ears when you butt into a quarrel. That's none of your business. People who shrug off deliberate deceptions saying, I didn't mean it. I was only joking, are worse than careless campers who walk away from smothering campfires. When you run out of the wood, the fire goes out. When the gossip ends, the quarrel dies down. A quarrelsome person in a dispute is like kerosene thrown on a fire. Listening to gossip is like eating cheap candy. Do you want junk like that in your belly? Smooth talk from an evil heart is like glaze on cracked pottery. So good. Once again,
Mic drop.
Eugene Peterson, just was in his element when he's looking.
Y'all, if you were listening to that and you didn't say ouch once or twice, I need you to rewind your podcast. I need you to go back and listen to it again.
Open your Bible.
Boom.
Read it again.
Boom.
Pause.
I mean,
I was trying hard not to read it snarky,
it's so good. It's so good. I read a bunch of people were like, oh, it's really hard to exegete these proverbs and you don't know where it come from and what's behind them. I'm like, it's not really hard. Now, granted, we're reading it from Eugene Peterson, which is a little paraphrase.
He's done some interpretive work for us.
But it's still there. I mean, it's still in the original text. It's just like, these are not hard to interpret. And I don't think these are words that don't have problems translating from ancient times.
Right.
Yeah. Totally. To contemporize something like this, it's not a big leap, right? So good.
Ignore all sideshow distractions, which is like, I'm sorry, every channel that we have on any TV right now.
Just turn the TV off, throw your phone into the pool, ignore it all.
Right. Campaigns, commercials, social media, all of it.
Ads.
News from everywhere, all spheres. It's all
emails.
Distractions.
It's your crazy uncle sent you.
Candidates
whatever that means.
The candidates
sideshow distractions are a strategy, right? I mean,
it's a political maneuver, yeah.
Right? And we know that, and yet
it's sucked in.
And I'm gonna again I'm gonna practice one of the guidelines for this week. I know that, and yet I still want to go watch that clip that of that person saying that crazy thing,
Yep.
and get sucked into it. And
And
so,
not just watch it, but I'm gonna send it to 5
yep,
different people,
huh,
and we're gonna talk about it, and we're gonna
huh,
spend like
huh.
I yes. Yes.
Cheap candy.
Yep. So
Like not even like the good candy. Not even like the
It's
good
that
stuff.
it's that cheap stuff they give out on Halloween,
Oh.
like those white Tootsie Rolls that are just nasty.
oh my gosh.
They're
Somebody is going to buy Halloween candy today and it's listening to this. This
Like,
is
don't
your
oh,
buy the
I'm not
cheap
gonna get the
stuff.
cheap stuff.
your sign.
What is it called? The
Get the
flavor
family
mix or
size.
whatever.
Right,
Family
right.
size
Right.
flavor. Yeah, don't buy it because
Do you want junk like that in your belly?
So I'm actually gonna kick us off with our first guideline. We've got two more, but I'm gonna start with the first one because it already hit
It's
me
good.
that I need to be sure to remember this one as we're talking about some of this. But our first guideline for this week that we're gonna talk about is practicing self-focus.
yeah.
And if
Oh
you've
well, we just all failed.
Yeah, we did.
exactly. Practicing self-focus. Now, it's not about self-centered. It's not about, being all about yourself or, self-absorption, all of that. Self-focus. If you have had a therapist, if you have had a facilitator, you have probably had someone go, can you repeat that? But with an I statement. And so we want to speak for ourselves. The simplest way to think about practicing self-focus is using I language for two reasons. One is you need to speak only for yourself because I can say we, and you may think I mean me, Jen, and Jad. You maybe think I mean me and my spouse. You may think I mean all women, whatever it might be. And that's not fair. I can't speak even for the three people on this screen that I pretty well know, a lot of their opinions on things. It's not fair. You don't get to speak for somebody else, and do that. And the second part of why we use I statements is also to be sure that we take accountability for our own experiences. That it's a lot easier for me to say, yep, people sure do get distracted by sideshow distractions. Sure is easier to say people than to say I get distracted. Even coming out of my mouth, it feels different.
Mhm.
And so when we have those moments to try, I always say to hide in a group. It's much easier to hide in a group
Yeah.
than to take ownership for whatever we're experiencing. It's easier to say people are angry about, Pastor, than to say I'm angry about.
I am angry about.
So I wanted
I
to start us off with that one as a moment of
I
accountability
know,
for
and
myself.
I hold myself accountable. I blame, shamed, and attacked news sources and candidates. Reasons I should. So I apologize. I did not practice the
It was just
guideline.
it was
I did not
examples.
do
It was
harm.
examples of what the text is telling us. You're exegeting the text right there. You're bringing
Correct.
it into
I
real
apologize.
life. Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's very easy for me to get caught up in all the noise.
Mm.
And one of the things that we have on the ballot for this week is one of the choices is gossip, and we put it like multiple times because gossip is one of my like 7 deadly sins. I don't think it is a 7 deadly sin, but it's wrapped up in there. But like
7.1.
it's the ability to I know something you don't know, and let me tell you, and but also just continuing to perpetuate lies or
Mhm.
because it's funny, it's a funny meme now or something like that. And yeah, I think it's easy for me to get distracted in and sucked into all of that because then I don't have to do the other work of seeking wisdom or checking myself and doing harm or trying something
Right.
else. And
Right.
this I love this. You grab a mad dog. This was my favorite one. I think when we chose scriptures like months ago, I don't know, went into one of your office. I was like, you grab a mad dog by the ears when you butt into a quarrel that's none of your business. I I love that because who hasn't seen, even just right now on all the social media, the reactive dog commercials. Do you all get that? Maybe because I have a reactive dog, but like not want to grab a mad dog, but that's what you do. People are butting into other people's business. Like it just happens so easily,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also it's oftentimes people couch it in religious language or religious
Yeah.
intent.
Yep.
So I have a dear friend who has been struggling with something with one of their children. Um, and and I called the person to check in on them, and it was so hard. I wasn't calling out of gossip. I was calling out a deep, deep concern and relatable concern as a parent.
Right.
Um, but both of us knowing each other, we both had to take off. This is not gossip. This is not me talking. This is not me. I just want to pray for you. That because we couch it in that religious language, but it's really gossip, you know. And I hear so many friends who have left the church because like the church have gossiped about everybody, but they said it was a prayer request, you know, and so we do that too. We couch this behavior with religious language and religious intent that goes back to last week and ends up just doing harm or grabbing a mad dog by the ears. It doesn't help anyone. And I think about the shame and blaming of last week too, that it ends up just heaping that hurt and blame and shame on. So I think we got to be careful not to couch our religious intent and practice when it's really just gossip and it's hurtful.
Well, and it's interesting because we talked about this theme a lot, and we originally had stay focused, and I don't remember who, it might have been Steve, someone, I don't know who said, focus forward, because staying focused too can be about you and your opinion, and sometimes when I originally thought about this, it's like the sideshow distraction and keep your focus forward. I think about a horse, that they put blinders on so the horse doesn't get distracted by things, and especially when there's fire or some emergency, they're staying forward. But staying focused can also mean I'm going to stay right where I am, and I'm not going to grow, and I'm going to stay in my opinion and I'm right, and the way I feel is the right thing. But if I'm focused forward, just that word means I'm growing, I'm moving, I'm on a journey, and I'm focusing not in the past.
Right.
I'm not going to focus in the past. I'm not going to focus on what's going on this side. I'm going to move forward towards wisdom, towards doing no harm, towards revealing the kingdom, towards whatever it is. Which I think probably the other guidelines we're pulling in today, a lot of it is about focusing backwards sometimes.
Mhm.
So you want to talk about those guidelines?
Yeah. So our two other guidelines, again, that I language to begin with. But our other two guidelines are ones that start with the word notice. And that's really, really important. And I also like to talk about with all of the guidelines, none of them guarantee any specific outcome.
Right.
They don't actually tell you what to do. And so then you still have the
Mhm.
responsibility, like we talked about that first week, of figuring out what you do as a result. And these are two of the perfect ones to talk about that too. The first is to notice process and content. And process and content are about process being the how and content being the what. It's I can say the same words with three different tones of voice, and they are three different statements entirely. I would say,
Mhm.
I'm so glad to be here versus I'm so glad to be here. Same content, totally different process, right? And the way that you perceive what's going on. I could easily say, well, I said I was glad to be here. What are you talking about? But you've noticed that there is the process and the content don't match. It also has to do with tone, has to do with inflection, has to do with body
Mhm.
language, some of that same stuff we were talking about with shaming, blaming, and attacking, nonverbal cues. It also can include the context. So if I'm saying the same thing, but I only say that when certain people are out of the room, or I'm saying the same content, but I'm only saying it around certain tables. And I'm putting, a meeting together, or I'm gathering people for a conversation, but I've chosen different people to be part of that. Who's at the table is part of your process as
Mhm.
well. So
Mhm.
you can have the best conversation in the world, but you want to pay attention to who is not in the room too.
Yep.
And so that is one of our process and content pieces. Again, it doesn't tell you what to do with it, but you need to pay attention and notice what is going on.
which
Our
is
ethics
great.
and our values are what tell us then what to do as a result. But this helps us understand those pieces.
So I'm gonna stop right there because I want to. That brings us to the other part of this wisdom verse that I love. People who shrug off deliberate deceptions, saying "I didn't mean it, I was only joking," are worse than careless campers who walk away from a smoldering campfire.
Yep.
That's right.
You know, and that's that processing content. It's like, well, you wait a minute, you meant it until someone called you on it.
Mm-hmm.
And now you're saying you're joking because something's not right here. Like
Right.
it doesn't, that doesn't make sense.
Yep.
Right. And you use that wisdom from the first week. Use your good
Right.
sense to be able to put those pieces together. And
Mhm.
that same verse leads us into the other, which is our notice intent and impact.
Right.
So we go around having impacts on people all day long, whether you realize it or not. Your words, your lack of words, your presence, your lack of presence, your facial expressions, you can't not impact. And so it's important for us to be as aware as we can of what our impact on others is. And you can take that all the way from, words spoken to in our environmental impact, right? We can span this pretty wide. But we want to care, the whole adage of it's the thought that counts. Well, I mean, no. Your thought matters, but it's not the ultimate deciding factor of the reality of a situation. If you had
Well, and
good,
that's used as an excuse for
uh-huh,
poor intent. I'm
exactly.
horrible at gift giving, and I really wish it was the thought that counted.
Yep.
But I could do better. I could be more intentional and make a better impact. So
Yeah.
I find that I use that as just an excuse for
Yeah.
poor, right? So
I mean, there are things where, again, there are phrases that my family used growing up that suddenly someone goes, well, that's offensive. That it was racist or it was this. And
mhm.
I didn't necessarily know
Right.
until this person let me know. And I can say, well, I didn't know that and try to slough it off. But even if I didn't know, the impact was still the same on the other person. And
Right.
so to be able to go to own that, to apologize for it. And on the other side of the impact piece, if you are someone who is negatively impacted, if you're on the end of that and you're able to speak up because it's okay to disagree and share that impact, um, to be curious about the intent of another person, to seek and try to assume positive intent, but to seek that intent out. Hey, when you said this is a perfect example of practicing self-focus too. You made me feel this. That's not self-focus.
No.
When you said this, it made me feel this. Or excuse me, when you said this, I felt this. Right? That's different. And then you can say, was that what you intended? Is that what was your intent? And to do that from an authentic place gives them the chance to be able to meet you where you are and say, oh my gosh, that's not what I intended at all. Or yeah, that is kind of what I intended. And then you can deal with that, right? Because
Right.
they're
Yeah.
operating out of a common reality.
Mhm.
Um, but you've noticed that maybe that intent wasn't what the impact was on you, and vice
Yeah.
versa. So both of these go with self-focus, but it's all being able to notice what's going on around you
Mhm.
and to ultimately care, which is what our faith tells us to do, to be concerned about how who's at the table or how we've impacted someone.
On the first part of that, when you said, like, if there's something I've said that's hurtful, that's racist, and somebody tells me, I've also learned, Ibram X. Kendi talks about how to be an anti-racist when you're given that, to say thank you, to have enough humility to go, "Ooh," and not be defensive, but say, oh, I didn't understand that my impact was thank you, right? And so
Yeah.
I just to add that on, that there's another layer of humility to when we're given that perspective of how the impact of our behavior, to be grateful that now we're aware. I learned this early on in premarital counseling that Shelley and I did before we got married, that we tend to pinprick people we know the best, and we hurt them in all kinds of different ways. I tend to brush things off. Like, it's no big deal. It's no big deal. It's no big deal. But if I don't share with the people I love how sometimes their behavior hurts me, then they don't know how to stop. They don't know to stop. They don't know. And so it's a gift to have someone say, hey, this is how it impacted me, because then I can learn how to do less harm. So I don't know if that makes sense, but
Yep.
that I find that's on the other end of receiving how my impact came across to people.
As a person who has words on my face that I don't intend, we have a new staff member, and I have to say, before I get in a meeting with you, I just need you to know I have a thinking face that's very scary for people, and I'm really just thinking, and I'm not mad, and I'm not. And so I've learned
Don't
the
read this.
my face, and it usually it very rare. It's really me going internally, having a conversation with myself about whatever it is going on and trying to understand. But I wanted to know, but is it also not noticing just the way other people say, but also does it happen in reverse? Because
Mm,
I don't struggle with the concept of this. I struggle with how it gets used a lot today. Like, this is how this impacted me. And someone says, I'm so sorry. That was not my intent.
Mhm.
And their apology doesn't matter. Like, I recognize that an apology doesn't take away the harm. I recognize that. But at some point, is there a respect back of, I notice the impact, but I also notice the intent, that
Right.
I misunderstood it, or they didn't explain themselves well,
And
Um,
that's
sometimes-
that seek the intent also, right?
yes,
It goes both ways. It's
right,
that what I was saying, being curious about, ask someone again, when you said this, I felt this, was that what you intended?
right,
That is the other side of that, to be able to seek out intent. And
right,
again, someone
clearly.
can go, oh my gosh, that's not what I meant at all. And you can, and again, you then have to decide what you're going to do with that. You don't have to accept an apology. None of
right,
this requires that, but it gives you the opportunity to
right,
meet someone and to offer grace. And then and if they say, well, yeah, that I did kind of say that meaning to hurt you, right? That most people aren't going to say that, but every once in a while you'll get that kind of authenticity, and then you can have that conversation, right?
right, right,
So
right.
that's the
Well, and I think too, what all of this does too is, I want to say that I do think there's staying focused forward means I do those hard conversations because I am seeking reconciliation, because I am
Mhm.
seeking. I receive those words from you, of apology, and I do want to focus forward, which is that we're going to move forward through this. And maybe, I will completely admit that, because of my family of origin, I like to run towards apologies and reconciliation probably faster than other people do. And I recognize that's something I'm working on at 53. But also I think there's this work that we can do, that if you're willing to have that conversation, to stay in the conversation, and what does that look like and mean?
Yeah.
And because I think what we can end up doing is blaming, shaming, and attacking ourselves,
yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
which is then we're back to square one.
Yeah.
Do no harm, and the seeking wisdom. So
Mhm.
they all connect really well together. But
Mhm.
again, like you said, it's your posture that is most important in all of this, and you have to
Right.
do what you can, right?
Mhm.
Um,
Mm.
Smooth talk from an evil heart is like glazed on cracked pottery.
Yep.
And so it's interesting, like, how many people are willing to say, yeah, that was my intent.
Mhm.
And this is why, and then be able to have that deeper conversation. And
Yep.
that's what
Mhm.
we'd want to get to, though. That's what
Yep.
it means to live in beloved community
Yep.
with one another, is to own our stuff.
Yep.
And that's
Yep.
really hard to do.
Yep.
That's why I always give that option, that example, because it's not one that we experience very often.
Ah,
But for us to really be honest, to go, what was my intent? Oh my, I did have a
ah,
little, I did
Yep.
mean to poke you a little bit more than I wish I
Mhm.
had. And to be honest with ourselves about that.
Right.
Well, and
Right.
and that means I have to be willing to talk. I have to know what my feelings are. Like I have to, and some of those feelings are feelings that we think we're not supposed to have, like anger or whatever it is. And so we pretended something else, and so we can't say that because we can't own that I was really mad at you, and I knew what I was doing all along.
Yeah, it's becoming self-aware and honest with who you are, and then being able to do the work. Because, somebody who says, no, 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 I'm glad that hurt you really bad, and I'll do it again. That's the right. But to be self-aware and go, oh, yeah, I think there's something about this that triggers me, and I hurt you, right? And I did that. And so not deflecting, owning, but also not like, yeah, being there's arrogance, right? Then there's boundary setting needs to have to set in, right? Then if somebody's approaches it that way, we have to set new boundaries. But if somebody approaches it a way of being more aware of who they are and curious about why they behaved in ways that made that such an impact, that's rich. That's where we can go with powerful places.
Well, that takes a level 2 of spiritual maturity and vulnerability that when we live on the surface in these times, like you said, the way I do no harm, I said last week, is to just hide away from the world.
Yep.
It means I want to live in beloved community, and I'm going to take those risks, knowing that someone say, oh, I'm sorry, that wasn't my intent. And knowing full well,
Right.
we don't know if that's true or not. We don't
Right.
have any.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
All right, so you're going to get the opportunity this week to cast your ballot again. Some of the choices you're going to have are: will you believe, share, perpetuate unsubstantiated claims? Will you gossip? Will you stay focused? Or will you gossip? Or will you show no concern of how your words or actions impact others? Or will you gossip?
Will you gossip?
Or will you gossip? Or will you gossip? Or will you gossip? So yeah, and again, what does it mean to examine, twice a day, maybe how, Lord, thank you, show light, show me, help me give the wisdom to do this. I give you thanks for what I've been through. And then, yeah, how have I done harm? How have I blamed, shamed, attacked? How have I not stayed focused forward? Or how did I stay focused forward in the midst of something? So we hope this will help you and grow you, and we'll see you back next week.